down the fence there as well. This is just a terrible scenario, obviously. We don't see any firefighters on the scene on this side of it from where we're looking right now with HD Chopper 8. As we kind of pull out a little bit, maybe we get more perspective here. You would imagine in a situation like this, especially when something is moving this fast, that any emergency personnel might first be going door to door there in that neighborhood and just making sure that everybody gets out. But this is certainly an awful scenario. As it's not just that one home that's involved. We see it racing through the yards of multiple homes there. And again, we don't see any containment happening on this side of the fire. Kyle, you know, they try to get in there and make sure that everybody's getting out okay. I do see a stream of water, though, coming from a hose there just on the other side, on the top side of that home there at the top of your screen. It looked like we saw a water hose starting to get in there. Don't know if that's yeah, that looks like it's an aerial, it's a ladder there, and you can see that this thing is moving awfully fast there. It's already blackened quite a space and a lot of development right around that. This is in Balch Springs. I don't have an address for us here right now. This thing just broke out, and as you can see, look how quickly that's moving there. Kyle, we've been talking a lot about that. Do you want to add something there?
Well, I was looking. Obviously, the fires kind of was spreading from. I'm looking at our picture here from kind of right to left in that camera, and you can. It looks like, I mean, I don't want to play complete, you know, fire detective here, but it almost looks like maybe it started there close to that roadway. Yeah. And that would make me think immediately a cigarette, or potentially parking in the tall grass and that engine lighting up. You know. Or
you mentioned, you know, it could even be that there's a little chain or something hanging from a truck or a car.
If you're pulling a trailer and in the you know, the chains that you use to attach the trailer to the back of the truck or whatever you're using, if those are scraping the concrete, those can create sparks as well. I mean, but look how quickly that thing spread. I mean,
that's just worst case scenario, though, there when we start seeing images like this, because, you know, this is when, you know, it's one thing when we have a field, okay, and a bunch of brush out there, and it's, you know, it's a terrible thing to see. You don't want to see it. But when it starts to get in these developed areas here, you don't know who's home. You don't know if there's pets inside, et cetera. And that just complicates the response to this that much more, because instead of getting out there and hitting those flames right away, they've got to at least make sure that people are all okay and that animals and so forth are making it out of there.
It's horrible. I mean, those homes clearly backed up to that field. That field's just bone dry, because it's not like it's something that gets the sprinklers or anything like that. And we've obviously been bone dry, and this will continue to be a problem here in North Texas until we get some decent rain. I do have some rain on the 10-day forecast coming up here, but I don't see it being widespread soaking rain. Certainly not going to get us out of the drought. So we'll gladly take whatever we can get. But reminder, it is the hottest and driest time of the year right now here in North Texas. And so these triple digits and the you know, heat that we continue to add and the dry conditions, unfortunately, are not a surprise at this point in the summer. The problem is so far to this point, it's already been hot and dry. So we have today, this includes today, 30 100-degree days so far this summer season. That's the 17th high for the 17th most on record. We've had 10 in a row so far in the current streak we have going. So through today, 1980 had 38 days, 1998 had 33 days, and 2011 had 31. So we're behind all three of those years, but a couple of them not by much. Right now outside, it's 103. This is another reason why the fire danger continues to be elevated, is it's dry out there. Yes, I know it's hot out, but we don't have a heat index. In fact, the heat index is below the temperature. That happens when the air is dry. Dew point at 57 doesn't sound all that low, but the humidity is at 22%. There's probably places in North Texas where it's in the teens as well. And this is going to continue the rest of the week. Triple digits through Friday, but then Saturday may bring us a little bit of relief in our future, as we could get some scattered rain back in the forecast and maybe a little more cloud cover that could help cool us off. In the meantime, that heat advisory continues for parts of North Texas and the state of Texas as well. We have heat advisories along parts of the West Coast and kind of in our neck of the woods from Oklahoma over to Arkansas, parts of Mississippi and Louisiana. The heat advisories and the excessive heat warnings that were along the East Coast are long gone, because they've cooled off. Must be nice. Look at that. D.C. 77 after the heat this weekend. New York's at 81. Must be nice. Well, we've just continued the heat here in North Texas. 103 at DFW right now. Remember, it does feel like 102 because we don't have that much of a heat index at the moment. High pressure continues to stay overhead, but it is going to move off to the east a little bit as we head into the late week time frame. That'll give us those temperatures back closer to normal and our rain chances return. Remember, our normal high this time of the year is 97. So 100 degrees is only 3 degrees above normal for this time of the year. but it is, definitely above normal. Warm and breezy, 81 for the low overnight tonight, and then tomorrow hot, dry, and breezy again. That fire danger will definitely continue. I'm going to go a degree hotter tomorrow afternoon, about 104. None of that heat on the 10-day forecast is record hot, but it is certainly hot nonetheless, and we will continue a streak of triple digits and continue to add to that triple-digit number as we head through the rest of the week. But a little scattered rain possible starting Friday, maybe into Saturday and Sunday to help cool us off just a little bit. I'm not promising anything substantial, but at least it is something. Let's go to break and we'll be back after this.
trying to get these flames under control as well. As we were talking about just a few minutes ago, this is worst case scenario when you are a firefighter responding to one of these grass fires. We've been hearing all the warnings lately, the red flag warnings about just how quickly this can happen. This thing just sprung to life within a matter of minutes and just started chewing through this neighborhood here. And again, as I say, this is worst case scenario when you're a firefighter because, yeah, you want to jump in there and just start tackling those flames. But of course, the first priority has to be to make sure that you've got a head count there, that you're making sure everyone is out of these structures. Some of these, homes might have animals in them as well. And so, firefighters are out there on the scene. We know that. No doubt they are going to be calling for additional help to head that way. This looked like, when we took a wider view of it, that it possibly, we don't want to, judge what may have happened before we got there on scene, but it almost looks like a triangle that came from the road over to the right side of this, and it almost looks like it goes right up to that road, like perhaps something may have sparked it there at that road, and then it just raced across that field that sat behind those houses. And if you've been out and about lately, if you're not talking about an area that gets irrigated regularly with a sprinkler system, you know how dry stuff is out there, and depending on how much grass there was there, how high that grass was, it didn't take any time at all for that fire to just get all the way across that field and get into these houses. Again, this is on the very edge of a very large subdivision there in Balch Springs, I-20 at Beltline Road. We're going to keep on watching this. I think that we're going to be getting some people on the phone here in just a moment from Balch Springs, and we have multiple crews headed that way as well. More coverage when we come back in just a moment. Is out of Balch Springs. Terrible scene. We hate to see this. We've seen this in several places here in North Texas, but boy, this thing just exploded here in a matter of minutes. This started as a grass fire not long ago at all. That fire just marched across that field that was on the backside of this row of houses there in Balch Springs. Just to give you your bearings, if you're familiar with that area, we're looking at an area that is just a tick north from I-20 there, right next to South Beltline Road. So that gives you your bearings here. If you're familiar with that area, we can't see most of the subdivision here because we're trying to stay zoomed in on what's happening here, and because that thick black smoke is still jumping into the sky. Look at the dog here, 2 houses down from this fire. We've got a dog in that backyard. This is exactly what we were just talking about. It looks like it just went through the little doggy door back into the house too. Exactly what I was talking about a moment ago. The first priority, you know, when you look at this, you go, well, we've seen these recently, Kyle, where you got fire crews out there along the line of the fire. They're spraying it down. They're getting on top of it. You get a helicopter dropping water. And we don't see that necessarily this time, because the priority has to be going house to house right now and getting people out of this neighborhood and making sure that everybody is out of this row of homes. And as we just saw there, we know at least a dog is still in the home that is 2 doors down from the edge of this fire. But again, this is where, you know, this is where it has already just chewed through. And I say chewed through because it happened like just lightning here, and something there is putting out some thick black smoke. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a pile of tires or something in that field, because it's really going. But if we went all the way over like we did earlier, Kyle, this looked like it made a perfect triangle right up to the road's edge there.
You could clearly see where it started. I mean, it was right along the access road there to I-20. And then it just spread with the, you know, this is on this field and this row of houses on the north side of I-20. The wind is out of the south, so any fire that gets started is going to spread from south to north as the wind, you know, blows that fire and the embers and everything from south to north. So with that triangle, I mean, it just immediately to me pointed that something right there along the roadway started that. So where's my mind immediately go? A cigarette or somebody that maybe stopped their car in what was potentially some tall grass. Heat of the engine could have sparked that fire as well. I mean, I don't want to say with 100% confidence.
Right.
But if I was a betting man, this, I mean, looks like a cigarette situation to me.
And you know that that's all it takes too, Kyle. And we've been talking about this for days, and now we're getting sort of a real-time lesson in how dry it is out there, because we checked in on this thing. You gave us the forecast real quickly.
That house right there. Like,
yeah, that one was doing okay.
Yeah.
And then boom, it was gone right after your forecast. It was fully up in flames. You know, we saw, you know, on the edge of this, if you know, were to continue going to the right as you're looking at the screen here, several houses down, we've got firefighters up on a ladder truck, and man, they are just dropping water on one of the houses that borders these that are already on fire here, trying to keep it from going any further down. But again, Kyle, we don't see that normal scene that we would normally see play out in something like this, where you've got multiple trucks that look like they're spraying water on this from every side, because they have so much on their hands right now. There it is, right there by the road, like you said.
Clearly where it had to have started.
What? Okay, that's yeah, that's where we're being told the fire did start. You can see that authorities have shut down the roadway there. Again, this is right where South Beltline meets I-20 there in Balch Springs. You can see that they are redirecting traffic away from that now, and that's what I was talking about, that triangle that Kyle was talking about earlier as well, where it just comes straight out from that road, and you can see the flames. That field was no match for these flames, and it just went right along there until it just smacked into the back of that row of houses there. And this gives us a good view too of how many more houses are on that other side of that row of houses. So, you know, firefighters very much want to make sure, I mean, it's awful that we're seeing the losses that we're already seeing here. They want to really make sure that this thing doesn't jump that street and just keep on going, Kyle. And a lot of these wildfires lately, they say a street is not even a match. I mean, it just, you know, jumps right over, something carries in the wind, and it keeps going.
There we see a firefighter in the backyard. I think that's the house next door to where we saw that dog. So maybe, you know, they have an eye on that animal as well, and any of the other animals that might be around as well. Because yeah, like you're saying, I mean, it's, you know, 4:30 in the afternoon. I mean, you're at work, and you can't stop something like this, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well,
and then the fences catch on fire, and then they go up in flames, and that just provides an easy avenue for the fire to jump from the fence to the house, and then it just keeps going. There was that pretty bright spot you see right there was I believe a shed that somebody had in their backyard that really went up in flames quickly. Kind of that southern edge of the fire, while it's burning just kind of open pasture, obviously not the main concern at the moment. And there you can clearly see where this thing started, right along the access road there to I-20. Cigarette, somebody parking in the tall grass, somebody dragging a trailer, potentially some sparks from some chains that were hitting the concrete.
Look at that, we've got a tractor. We just passed by it, but you can see that there's a tractor of some sort trying to make sort of a rudimentary fire line, because you can see it's still burning there along the grass. It was headed toward those flames along the grass, at least hoping to maybe stop the march through the grass that might threaten more homes. But as you were talking about, Kyle, these wooden fences, I mean, they provided that conduit. It almost picked up the fire and took it straight into each one of these houses. You can almost see the fire just going in a line straight down those fences. A lot of those have, stain and so forth on them, and that'll just catch right up and take it right into those houses. I'm trying to count here how many are involved here, but it looks like we've got a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 houses right now that are fully or partially in flames there.
I just counted, I have Google Maps pulled up, I just counted that row of streets. This is Broadview Drive is the actual road or street that those houses are on. There's 17 to maybe 18 houses that face that street that's right there.
And there you see too, Kyle, that is beyond that initial row of houses, or it's a little bit further down, and we're seeing it come through the roof of that one as well. And again, when we're looking at something like this, you can just hope that everybody's getting out, that neighbors went door to door, that first responders were able to get door to door, that you might know if your neighbor's pet down the street is home alone and you've got a way to get in there and help out. But yeah, that's terrible situation to be sure.
Well, and then we hope that fire's going to eventually spread into those trees. Luckily, those trees are green, but I mean they're going to be dry as well. Hopefully, those don't go up in flames even more. If some of those are cedar trees, usually those cedar trees can go up very, very quickly. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. All
right, the breaking news we're watching in Balch Springs. Let's take a quick break right here as we continue to watch the firefight out there and the quick response to try to get this thing under control. We'll be right back. Moving, terrible dry conditions out there this afternoon. Just to orient you, if you're somewhat new to the DFW area or if you don't get to Balch Springs very often, Balch Springs just to the southeast of Dallas, right next to Mesquite. If you were coming in from the east on Interstate 20, right before you get to 635, that's about where this is happening. It's just north of I-20, right there at South Beltline Road. I believe that we're looking at Broadview Drive here, this row of homes there that just caught fire. You can see multiple streams of water coming from the other side there on one of those residential streets as firefighters get in there and try to control this thing from continuing to go through that neighborhood. And Kyle Roberts has been with us this afternoon talking about this as well. Kyle, when we look at the smoke plumes coming off of each one of these homes and coming off of that field, it confirms what we thought, that this looks like it started over there right next to the roadway before it just blossomed out in sort of that triangle, because if you look at those plumes, that is the direction that the wind is blowing.
Yeah, I mean, you can clearly see where that thing started. So there's a couple gas stations there right at Beltline and the frontage road or access road to I-20 or whatever you want to call it. Right there, this is a couple gas stations right here. Here's the access road and the inner onto I-20. That's I-20, so here's the access road, the frontage road. I mean, there's where the fire started because the wind's out of this direction. So clearly, started here, then it just spread and eventually, unfortunately, ran into that row of houses, row of fences right here. This, grassy area, this just piece of property, just bone dry from the lack of recent rain that we've had. So the fact that it started right there next to the roadway, my mind immediately goes to a cigarette. My mind goes to, maybe somebody dragging a trailer that had some change, sparking off the bottom of the concrete. And, one of the sparks got in the tall grass, or even parking your car in some tall grass. Just the heat from your engine can light some of those grasses on fire as well. But my mind probably, if you were to say which one of those three, it would likely be a cigarette. Somebody just driving down the road, flicking the cigarette out the window there. And unfortunately, this can happen because it's breezy out. It's actually pretty dry out. I know we talk about the summer being, hot and humid here in North Texas, but actually today and the last several days as well, the air's been pretty dry, and when you have dry air, that can help spread these fires very, very quickly. I mean, here's your current wind gusts, up over 20 miles an hour. Dallas to Terrell, kind of the closest locations there to Balch Springs, which is right about here in southeastern Dallas County. 20 to 21 miles an hour, Waxahachie gusting to 25. The heat, it's 100 plus in those areas as well, 103, 102. 102 kind of surrounding that area, and then the relative humidity, which is how just dry the air is. Those percentages are in the 20s. Once that fire gets started, it actually can drop the humidity a little bit as well, kind of right around the fire area. So that's something to watch. Yeah, it just goes without saying. From now until we get widespread soaking rain, you got to keep the cigarette butts in the car. Do not put do not flick them out the window or anything like that. Fires like this can get started and spread extremely quickly. Those grasses are just bone dry. I know your yard might be green, but it's because you've been watering it. But those, areas that are unwatered, these, just grassy areas, these pieces of property that are just completely reliant on the rain, on Mother Nature, are bone dry right now. And those grasses that have become dormant or died are just very, very efficient at spreading those fires. Tow chains, if those are sparking, that can cause problems. As I mentioned, parking over tall grass. Don't leave a campfire unattended. I mean, burn bans are all over North Texas right now, so you shouldn't be doing any campfires anyway. And you got to be careful with sparks. This one doesn't look like it was caused by a welding, but I did a course one time with a fire official, and they told me welders are high percentage of fires that get started, especially kind of in those big ones that out on ranches and things like that. So you got to be careful with the situation. Let's go back to the chopper shot here, and you can just see that row of houses. What was this? Broadmoor? Is that the street that we think it's Broadview. Excuse me. That all these houses line up against kind of facing north there. Broadview runs east to west. And there were about 17 to 18 houses that are on that street that are right there. And it looked like, I don't know, if by counting, maybe 7 to 10 of them at least have some sort of fire situation with them at the moment. Yeah,
and we've seen this on the other side of this row as well, where firefighters are really trying to hit that house that is right there on the edge, maybe to see if they can stop this thing from marching further down. Some of these are just an absolute total loss. Look at that right there as it just continues to chew through that house. And we saw just a moment ago when we were looking at the field, Kyle, Yeah, well, first of all, look at the gusts out there. It looks like that wind is just not doing these firefighters any favors right now. They're obviously out there in extraordinary temperatures right now with all of that gear on. This is a difficult firefight to say the least. But when we were out there in the field, Kyle, you can see that there are trucks that are moving along the fire line further down from us right here, and that is to keep the fire from moving sort of to the left of where we would see here, that might be a very good line of attack because you've got even more development. If it were continue to go to the left there, it could go straight up into this subdivision because there is a park that cuts into this subdivision, and no doubt that's got a lot of brush and so forth too. So might have been a very smart idea to try to grab this fire before it could really get into these trees and keep going to the left here and then perhaps straight up through that park.
Yeah, and this was the house right here that earlier we saw a dog in the backyard. I mean, it looks like that house is doing okay at the moment. I do want to recall that at the moment to say that it looks like they're okay, and we did see firefighters in the house, in the backyard of the house next door. So hopefully, if there was a dog in either one of those houses or in the backyards, that they were able to get those out of there. But right now, what we would say the western end or the kind of left-hand end of the houses so far being spared. But as I mentioned earlier, the fire line where it's sweeping through the field is kind of approaching that row of trees. Now, it could do two things. Could help slow it down because, you have less grassy areas because you have, just the row of trees there. But if those trees are very dry, especially if they're cedar trees, those cedar trees, we've seen this time and time again, those cedar trees can light up like matches sometimes. So hopefully that doesn't happen. It does look like that maybe that kind of western edge, the southern edge of the fire line there through the field does look like it is much more kind of under control than what it was 10, 15 minutes ago. But unfortunately, I mean, just those houses right there continue to burn.
Yeah, but the fortress, though, Kyle, it's kind of amazing. There was a two-story house that is in the middle of that line of homes that are just on fire there. What a terrible scene, by the way, as we've just broadened out here and you see what is happening. Yeah, you do. You feel helpless. Imagine being the occupant, the homeowner, the tenant of one of those homes there, and your whole life is inside. Hopefully, everybody got out safely today, but this is just an absolutely apocalyptic scene for people who are living in this neighborhood here. Amazingly, though, there is a two-story house that's in the middle of that line there, though, that I was telling you about a moment ago, where firefighters were working both sides of it, and it looked like it was sort of relatively unscathed compared to the homes around it that were just burning down to the ground. But this is the other side of it. As we said, this is a rambling, sprawling subdivision there. I don't know how many homes we're looking at, but we're looking at quite a few of them there, and firefighters have a lot to play defense on this afternoon, Kyle, because the last thing they want is for this to jump that first residential roadway there in this neighborhood, because then you're running into all kinds of problems. And we always go, well, that might be kind of hard for it to jump there. When you see wind like this, and all it takes is a gust to pick up, an ember or something burning on one of these homes and just, sort of waft over to one of these other yards and start it there, and then you've got a whole new hot spot to deal with. And hopefully, they're evacuating people out of this subdivision and getting as many people out as possible.
Yeah, certainly so. With how engulfed that first row of houses there, I mean, there's for sure sparks getting carried, north with the wind there. So you're just hoping at this point that, one of those doesn't, light. And I mean, because look at some of these people's yards. I mean, look how dry, that yard is, and that yard is, and that yard is, and all these, you're just hoping that none of those, spark, lights any of your people's backyards on fire at this point, and then it spreads to a fence, and then that eventually spreads to a house. Thankfully, we haven't seen that yet at all, but I mean, with all the fire and all the embers that are clearly getting put out here, that is definitely a concern with the row of houses north of there at the moment as well. Because I mean, just look at the heat and look at all the embers that are certainly flying up into the air and then being spread to the north with these 20-mile-an-hour wind gusts that we're seeing at the moment.
The great thing here, though, is, and we have to look for the positives as well, though, Kyle. As bad as these houses look, and this is a really bad situation right here, this thing moved so fast and jumped into all of these houses, and you went, oh, geez, look at all the fuel ahead of it if this continues to go with all of these other houses. It looks like, anyway, on this bottom part of your screen, they have been holding the line with where where that fire has made it to.
Yeah, I
just
keep looking at this house behind the banner has the solar
doghouse.
panels on the roof, and we haven't seen it progress, any farther, which would be west here, because this is south, that's north, this is west, that's east.
That home
it has
two down on the west there from where the fire was. That's what we're calling the doghouse. That's where we saw the dog in the backyard. Looked like it ran through the doggy door there. But again, those homes look like they have been sort of the demarcation point where firefighters have been trying to hold the line to keep this thing from moving further. But, a lot of this subdivision we can't even see right now, Kyle, because that smoke is just so thick spilling into this neighborhood. Just an awful scene for so many people who obviously are worried that this thing could still continue to march on further. I think we're going to go to break here real quickly. We'll continue to watch this breaking news coming out of Balch Springs near I-20 and South Beltline Road. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
News: a fast-moving grass fire has spread to multiple homes in Balch Springs. This is a live picture from HD Chopper 8. There are, at last count, Chris, at least 8 homes that were on fire.
True, and some of those we may not even be seeing some of the damage because some of the flames and some of the damage could be happening inside. But as the chopper kind of widens out and gives you sort of a bird's eye view of what's going on, you could see that center area and that thick black smoke just pouring out of there. That's an indicator that either heavy fuel or, more likely in this case, man-made materials are burning, and it's sort of obscuring our view of part of this subdivision because that smoke is just that thick.
Yeah, this is, you talk about that subdivision, Chris. It is in the Spring Ridge neighborhood. This is in the far north part of Balch Springs, right there on the border of Balch Springs and Mesquite. The homes on fire are located on Broadview Drive. Again, in the Spring Ridge neighborhood. This area it has been bone dry due to the lack of rain recently. As we heard meteorologist Kyle Roberts talking about earlier, the air is dry. It's been a breezy afternoon and just the perfect recipe to spark a fire and for that grass fire to spread quickly.
Yeah, and obviously I think what they're looking at now, obviously you don't want that fire to jump the road. It's already cut clear down that line of homes from top to bottom, and you do not want it to jump the road there because then you've got another line of homes, and at some point they want to try to get a line in there to stop that fire from spreading. And
there's HD Chopper 8 just getting a really close bird's eye view of this home right here as firefighters try to put this fire out. And there you see that black smoke and that home just completely on fire. We've seen several homes just totally destroyed this afternoon. There was one home where we saw a dog out in the backyard. That dog turned around very quickly, went back inside. At this point, we have no information about any injuries or if anyone has died.
Yeah, and again, you know, what you were seeing there, I know you saw a crew there on the ground hitting it with some water from the ground, and also a ladder unit there trying to get some water and retardant there on top of it. You know, at this point, you can obviously look at that home. They're not trying to save the home. The goal at this point is to somewhat contain the fire, to keep it from jumping to yet another home. Saving some of these homes, they're past that point now. The goal here is just to keep it from doing any further damage in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and the fire started behind those homes there on Broadview Drive, so I guess on the south side of the homes, and you saw it spread so quickly. I mean, it jumped those fences, Chris, and you saw it consume one house, and then it just consumed the fence and moved over to the next house and the house after that. But again, this is in the Spring Ridge neighborhood, and we saw firefighters arrive here, I mean, right after that fire started. I mean, this was around the 4 o'clock area, shortly after. But that is, I mean, they are in total defense mode right now, making sure, like Chris said, that fire doesn't jump the street and jeopardize any other homes on the opposite side of the street there.
Yeah, and a little bit earlier, we were also seeing they did have at least one construction vehicle out there behind the homes trying to cut a line. You know, what do fires need to burn? Well, they need fuel and they need oxygen. So if you can somewhat deprive them of that fuel, you know, what they'll do is they'll try to cut a line in the back and basically get down to the dirt to get anything that may burn out of the way of the fire. Cutting a fire line can give them sort of a basis to at least stop it on the backside. But again, when you look at that kind of smoke, you got to imagine it is some pretty intense and terrifying conditions for the crews that are down there trying to contain it at this point.
And there you see all of that black charred land behind to the south of Broadview Drive there, where you see that grass fire was able to start and just take off, Pete. And like we heard Kyle talking about earlier, Pete, it's just bone dry outside.
Yeah, Cynthia, the fire started south of this subdivision. The subdivision is on the north side of Interstate 20. So it's really, the subdivision is, if you're familiar with this area at all, it's in eastern Dallas County. It's north of I-20. It's just on the west side of Beltline, and then it's just to the east of Pioneer. So if you kind of think of that quadrant there, that's where this fire is taking place. Now, it started on the access road or the frontage road.
And when you think of on that frontage road right there, so it started to the south of this subdivision. And okay, now on the bottom of your screen, that's to the south. So it started south of there, right along the frontage road. You can see where the fire started, and then it moved to the north up into this subdivision. And there's a Fox Fuels right in that southeast corner of that quadrant I talked about a moment. See it right there? That's I-20. Yep. And you're looking off to the east there. The top of your screen is off to the east. The cars that are moving up down to the bottom of the screen, they're heading off to the west into Dallas. So it started right there by that off of the very top of your screen, and it's burned toward that subdivision. We have winds right now of about 20 miles an hour. And this part of Dallas County is under an extreme drought. It's extreme drought right now. What's the rainfall deficit? It's 10, maybe 11 inches in deficit with rainfall. And you can see the surrounding area. You see how brown it is. So clearly we're in a significant drought right now. Haven't had any rain. I think at DFW Airport it's been 40-some days, 52 days with no rainfall. So we're looking at a serious problem right now. But it started right along the frontage road. Okay, and then the south winds blew everything to the north into that subdivision, and that is a massive subdivision on the left side of the screen, and you'll be able to see how, I mean, Chris, I think you pointed it out so appropriately, you know, everything started right over here, it then burned off to the north, and this subdivision has hundreds of homes within that subdivision, and you can see as it started here in this corner, that's that fuel center that I was talking about. You know, these things always start with a cigarette that was thrown out. Who knows what's happened with this one, but you certainly can't rule that out. But these south winds, 10 to 20, maybe up to 30 miles per hour, just blew everything up to the north. And these homes, I mean, there is just nothing left. And as Chris pointed out earlier, firefighters are out there right now and temps that are probably, you know, heat index 105, 110. Then you throw in the fire heat that's taking place, and they're just trying to stop it from spreading here across the road to this next row of homes so it doesn't just continue to spread street by street. But this is a row of homes that's backed up along this empty area that's right along this the frontage road here. So Chris and Cynthia, this is, well, I tell you what, this has been our fear for weeks now with our lack of rainfall. Is, you know, it's one thing like Chalk Mountain is burning. There's all kinds of problems there. And it's impacted, you know, dozens and dozens of families. It's horrible. But now we're in a subdivision where you have hundreds of homes that the congestion is so much more significant, so much larger here in the Metroplex. And now we have a significant fire in the Metroplex. And the devastation is just, it's just horrible right now as we look at these pictures.
And Pete, you mentioned that you're saying the wind's blowing roughly about 20 miles an hour right now. Based on this image that you're seeing, in the direction in which all that smoke is going, is that the direction that the wind is pushing at this point?
Yeah, the wind is moving from the right side of your screen to the left side of your screen. So it's a south wind. Those south winds push everything to the north, and that's evident there by the smoke and by the path of the fire that you can see with those black areas that have been scorched.
And unfortunately, to the north,
I know.
are more homes.
Yeah, that's another row of homes. And you can see the firefighters on that one street into that subdivision, right as we're zooming in there, just on the left side, you can see how those firefighters are on that street shooting the water into those homes. I mean, man, there is nothing left right there. No. I hope to goodness that people got out of those homes before problems developed for them.
That is the hope. And on Broadview Drive, I've counted on Google Maps, there are 17 homes on that drive, on that street, and we've counted at least 8. There you see several firefighters in the backyard there of that home. Now we see the white smoke coming out of that. But you still see a lot of dark black smoke coming out of a lot of these homes. And like Pete was talking about, I mean, it's breezy out there. And so, I mean, they've already been at it for about an hour. and they're going to be at it here for a lot longer this evening.
Or do we know how many? This is what alarm? 2 alarm, 3 alarm, 5 alarm? Do we have any idea?
No, we tried calling and they could not take our phone calls.
Understandable.
I mean, they were in the firefight as we called, so we let them off the phone and let them go do their thing. But again, the question now is, of course, have there been any injuries? We pray no one has died, but of course we just can't get that information right now. And also how this could have started. I mean, was it someone who tossed out a cigarette butt, which you talk about all the time, Pete, especially in these dry conditions? Something as small as that can cause something as big as this.
Yeah, I mean, or was it a spark of some sort? I mean, we know there was no lightning. There were no dry thunderstorms today across the area. So that was not the case. Nothing is taking place on radar. I mean, we have some rain in East Texas, far East Texas, up around Linden and Texarkana, but nothing here in the immediate, nothing in North Texas at all. But you know, you have to think it's some type of a spark, some type of a cigarette. I mean, the majority of these fires start with a cigarette or some type of a match that was thrown out, whether it was intentional or not. I mean, we don't know. I know the investigators will do their due diligence there and come to some conclusions. Yeah,
we're going to take a quick break here, Pete. We're going to reset here because I think when we come back, we have made contact with somebody who's right there in that neighborhood, and we're going to try to get them on the line on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
Of that fast-moving grass fire in Balch Springs that has consumed multiple homes, at least 8 at last count. This is happening in the Spring Ridge neighborhood in the far north part of Balch Springs. The homes on fire are located on Broadview Drive.
Yeah, there's also a Comfort Inn and Suites right near where those fires are burning, and John Dietrich is staying there at the Comfort Inn. John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm very glad that you seem to be doing okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and where you and the other guests are at this point?
Yes, about 4 o'clock, actually 4:10. We saw the fire. I was in a meeting actually in the hotel. It's a beautiful hotel and nice, seating area where we could have meetings. And we looked out the window and we saw all the grass on fire, and we've been watching it ever since, just spreading and growing, and on the news, all the houses, unfortunately, burning, and it's a very, it's a very tragic and emotional scene.
So I assume they got everybody out of their rooms, right, at this point?
Yes, when around 4:10, they evacuated all of the rooms, and everybody had to either leave the hotel or just hang out in the lobby until the all clear was sounded, because the water pressure dropped significantly because of the fire hoses, and we just wanted to be abundantly safe. So the staff at the hotel was very good at, they knocked on all the doors, they had the alarms going, and made sure that every person was out of the rooms.
So John, so as I understand it, you and some guests are currently in the lobby as we speak to you. Can you smell smoke from where you are?
Yes, the air quality is dropping because the upper atmosphere comes more toward the hotel, and we can definitely smell the smoke. Not real strong, but it's definitely, we can see it. We can see the black and the white where they're putting it out, and we have a front row seat.
Are managers concerned about this fire spreading closer your way? Are there any measures in place in case that happens?
I spoke to the owner of the hotel, and he came here when he heard about the fire, and I was speaking to him. Actually, he handed the phone to me when you found me, and well, they couldn't run their sprinklers because no water pressure here, and there's nothing we can do other than keep the guests safe. What is what they're trying to do, and hope the situation gets cleared up.
And John, do you know, have you seen, are any of the residents from this subdivision, are any of them coming over to the Comfort Inn at all just to find refuge?
Well, I don't work here. I'm a guest, so I wouldn't know if they're getting the calls, but there are rooms available. If anybody needs a place to stay, if they're put out, I'm sure they can be accommodated.
Our thanks to you, John, currently a guest. Where are you in from, by the way, John?
We're from Springfield, Missouri.
All right. Wow. Well, we pray for your safety and for all the other guests there at the Comfort Inn and Suites in Balch Springs. Thank you, John, for taking the time to speak with us about what you're seeing from your windows there, which is a lot of black smoke and flames. Thank you, John.
And Cynthia, he's just on the east side of Beltline Road. Mm-hmm. So this fire is all on the west side of Beltline Road. So, I mean, as the crow flies, he's, 100 yards, 150 yards from all of this. I mean, it's just going to be off to the top right of your screen there where he is. So, they're really, really close to that. The winds are blowing it a little bit, not directly in his direction, but close enough. I mean, and this is a big fire, and it is hot outside. And when, Chris, as you've mentioned before, when you're looking at flames that are that black, I mean, you're looking at some serious heat and some serious materials that are burning right now. And up on the top of your screen is where that Comfort Inn is. Just across the street is the chopper continues. That's Beltline Road up there on the top. Mm-hmm. See the tall building up there on the top right? That's the Comfort Inn. That's where John is right now.
All right, and this just coming in right now again, we are being told that if you live in this neighborhood and you need a place to stay, if you know someone who lives in the Spring Ridge neighborhood of Balch Springs, there is now a place for those people to go to and evacuate to. This is at the Balch Springs Rec Center. There you will find the Red Cross. They're bringing the cots. They're bringing food. They are bringing anything they can to make sure that you are comfortable while you are there at the Balch Springs Rec Center. If you have in any way been impacted by this fire here in the Spring Ridge neighborhood.
Yeah, again, just to reset, we have been watching this massive fire take out up to at least 7 homes in this neighborhood. As soon as this fire broke out and we got word of it, we started dispatching crews to get a better handle of what was going on. Matt Howerton is now there on the scene. Matt, can you sort of bring us up to speed on what you're seeing?
Yeah, hey Chris, hey Izzy. Yeah, this is a pretty rough fire, and it's in a really bad spot in terms of where the property lines are for this home. And where the fire started, which is in a field behind those homes. I'm probably about 50 yards, 100 yards away from where this fire likely started in the fields behind these homes. we have a really good shot of what fire crews are doing right now. We have at least one ladder up that we can see just spraying a ton of water into this one house where the flames are shooting out through the roof. I don't know if you can see that from the air with our chopper. But right now, from what we can tell, there are crews on the ground. We have at least Hutchins Fire Department out here, which they came all the way up to help fight this fire. They are watching the fire on the lines of the property here to make sure it doesn't come anywhere near where we are, which is at Fox Fuels. That is a gas station. It's a pretty large gas station. And some of the charred grass, I mean, we're talking about maybe 20 to 30 yards away from this gas station. So they're trying to make sure that doesn't come this way and get closer, obviously, to this area. There's also a bulldozer out here that we saw. So they're out here making a fire line, in a sense, to try and contain the spread of this fire, at least in this field that I'm in right now. When it comes down to this neighborhood, though, I mean, we were talking about it earlier. I think, Cynthia, you said at least 5 homes possibly impacted. The way I'm looking at things right now, it probably could be more. We just can't tell because the smoke is so thick and it's so dark. But at this point in time, we drove by the entrance to this neighborhood. They have it blocked off, and for probably good reason, to let firefighters do their work. But this is just a tragic scene out here, and it just goes to show you, just based off of how dry it is outside, you can literally see how fast the fire will move if something out here does catch fire in this type of grass. I mean, it's just fuel ready to go up if there is a spark or if somebody throws a cigarette out, you know, that sort of thing. And the fact that this moved so fast towards these properties, towards these homes, and just caught on fire so quickly, it goes to show you the danger that we are dealing with out here when it comes down to the heat, obviously, how hot it is, how dry it is, and at a moment's notice, things can really shift. Pete was talking about the wind. It's windy out here, and like I said, once that fire starts and it starts moving, it's hard to stop it, and crews are really trying hard to contain this out here.
Yeah, Matt, it spread so quickly. I mean, watching it just after 4 o'clock, it was really, I've never seen anything like it here in the DFW area, at least not in the 15 years I've been here. I mean, you and I covered these kinds of fires in New Mexico, but I just have not seen them burn like this, where they consumed homes one after another so quickly, like they have this afternoon. We're going to take a quick break. Live continuing coverage from Balch Springs right after this.
whether or not they need cantini for the firefighters, looking at whether or not we need to set up a shelter or find homes, residents for the folks that have been impacted by the fire, and making sure everybody has water, snacks, just some emotional support to kind of get through this situation.
Thanks for all you do, Brian Monahan, and you guys can be found at the Balch Springs Rec Center. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Yeah, all right. As we break away from this, want to invite you to stay with us for News 8 at 6. We'll have much more on this fire and the incident, the shooting today at Dallas Love Field.
Say that one more time. Sorry, you cut out. Okay, what time does that start? Okay, and then we'll hand our TVU off to Matt for the 6th then, right? Okay, awesome. Yeah, bye.
we continue to follow breaking news, and thank you for joining us for this digital coverage of this grass fire in Balch Springs, which at last count has burned at least 8 homes in the Spring Ridge neighborhood of Balch Springs.
That's right. I think we have Ariel Placencia is there on the scene right now. Ariel, can you hear us?
Is surreal. I'll step out of the way so that you can see what we're looking at here. Take a look at all the houses in the background there. You can see that thick smoke coming up. Perhaps you heard the siren going on in the background. We've got a ton of emergency vehicles on scene. We're again at I-20 and Beltline. We're at the gas station there, a safe distance away, but you can see all of the land that's completely charred and burned between us and the houses that are on fire. If you look through that dark smoke, you can see a ladder that's extended. They've been spraying water from that hose from the last 20 minutes since we've been here trying to get this thing under control. We do know that several houses, unfortunately, are burned as fire crews try to get this thing under control. Perhaps you can hear more sirens in the background there. Now on scene, again, you can totally see all of this land that's burned. It's completely black. And we are at I-20 and Beltline. And this service road behind me, behind the camera, that's going to be to get on to I-20 West. And when you look directly to the right of where I am, that charred land comes all the way up to the service road. That's where it kind of stops right there at the road. It's just past trees, so it's hard to see, but I just wanted to give you an idea of just how far this extends. So again, it goes from the service road and then backs up all the way to the houses that you see in the back. And if we'll pan back over this way, we can see this ladder going again with that hose, attacking those houses and trying to knock this thing down. We've got a fire truck coming over here from my right that's coming into this gas station parking lot, bringing more resources and crews here. But again, this is completely surreal. We were able to see this dark smoke from 12 miles away when we were trying to work our way here, fighting traffic over to the scene. So that's what firefighters and their resources are up against at this hour. Again, one last look up here. Again, we've got this ladder that's spraying water on these houses that you see off into the distance. You'll notice that a lot of these houses are pretty close to each other, these residences. There's not a lot of space in between them, so certainly there's a fear of this thing spreading even more than it already has. That's what's going on live on the scene here. We're going to work to get more information from officials, but Chris and Izzy, this is pretty devastating to see everything behind me.
Ariel, and we will let you go talk to officials because the biggest question on our minds, have there been any injuries? Has anyone been killed in this fire? So we'll let you go get that information. We can tell you that these fires, these homes burned on Broadview Drive, and we have Israel Medina on the line right now. He lives in this neighborhood. Israel, can you tell us exactly where you live and what you saw at around 4 o'clock this afternoon?
Yes, I live over here off on Spring Ridge Circle on 14804 South Spring Ridge, and I was just outside, just minding my own business, and I just smelled smoke, and the first thing that thought to my mind, I'm like, something is burning. So I just ran out to the front yard and I started walking down at least like 100 yards, and it got real dark. So I came back running to my house. And I was letting my neighbors know that there's a fire over there. And I panicked, so I started seeing ashes. So I just started watering my my grass and my roof. But other than that, it looks pretty bad. I see families just grabbing their things and running out to the door and just leaving. But it was pretty bad.
Israel, are you by yourself? Are you alone in the house?
Well, my wife was at work at that time, and I was here with my kids. So once my wife get off work at 4, and then when my wife arrived, that's when I told her what was going on. Well, actually, she saw it from while she was driving over here. By that time, I was alone with my 2 kids.
Israel, can you talk about the air quality in your neighborhood right now? I mean, is it smoky? Are you going to be able to stay in your house?
It is pretty bad. It was. I had to wear a mask because it was getting to me. I had to drink a lot of water because I was having a hard time breathing. It got real dark at the moment at that time, and now it looks a little bit better now, But earlier it was pretty bad. It was ashy and dark, and everybody was wearing masks. you know. Yeah.
And Israel, sort of walk me through what your own thinking. Were you staying because you wanted to get as much water on your house as possible?
Yes.
Walk me through
Because
what's on your mind.
the first thing was on my mind is just I have to water my grass and my roof, you know, because you never know. There's a lot of strong winds right now, and I've been seeing these grass fires on the news, you know, houses burning down, and not see people just watering their grass. So that was my first thing to do, just water my grass and hope for the best. Hopefully everything goes good.
Israel, do you think at this point your home is okay? Are you going to stay there? Are you going to leave with your family? What's next for you?
Next for me is just wait for a while to see how it is. If it gets worse, then I would just have to take my family just to evacuate my home. But I'm just going to wait it out, just keep watering and see what happens.
How's your family, Israel? Listen, Chris and I have children. I know when you have children, that adds an extra layer of panic. How are they doing? What are they saying?
They were scared. They were scared, and they were already grabbing the things. My son, he was, scared, crying, and my daughter was also kind of scared also. But I have to calm them down and relax. Everything's going to be, everything's going to be okay. Just, it's going to be good. But it looks a lot better now. I don't see as much as smoke, but it's a lot better now. But I'm still watering. Actually, I'm watering my grass right now. I'm still.
Okay, so you're outside. Israel, have you talked to any of your neighbors about your neighbors whose homes are that we're watching burn right now? Have you heard anything about whether those families were not home or able to get out in time?
Yes, actually, my neighbor. When this fire was going on, I went to go talk to my neighbor because she has a cousin that lives on that side where the fire is happening. So I let her know, so she panicked, so she ended up calling them. And I think they already evacuated their homes, but I'm not sure if that was one of their houses that burned down or not.
Okay. Well, Israel, if you can spread the word, if people need a place to go to, the Balch Springs Rec Center. Do you know where that is? That's open right now?
Yes, I do.
Good. And the Red Cross is there right now. You talked about how you were having trouble breathing a little earlier. If it gets to be too much, you make sure to go to that rec center, okay?
I sure will. Thank you.
Thank you for making time for us, Israel, as you water your lawn. And we pray for the very best that this fire is over and done and will not affect your residents. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, as we let Israel go, as you're looking at, just to reset here, we've been following this massive grass fire that has engulfed part of a subdivision there in Balch Springs. You're looking at two views of it. One, obviously, a bird's eye view showing you, some of the widespread damage there in some of the homes that have been completely incinerated. And then on the right there, a view from the ground where you can see from the backside. This is again that gas station where Ariel Placencia was just a few minutes ago, and you can see that the field that has been scorched a little bit, and then sort of the homes, and you can make out where that water is coming from with the fire crews there on the ground, still trying to put water on some of these homes. At this point, not necessarily in any way trying to save these homes. It seems to be well past that point, but obviously trying to stop the fire from spreading to even more homes.
All right, so you talk about saving some homes. There are some that have burned. This is a live look from HD Chopper 8 of all the homes that have burned. 1, 2, 3. There's another one there. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. 8, and there you did, that jumped that house. 9, 10, So there we can count 10 homes that have been on fire.
And you may wonder, that may seem unusual to you, but it's actually something you see rather frequently in wildfires. I covered a lot of wildfires over a lot of years in California, and you would go to some of these areas and one home would be completely reduced. I mean, nothing but the slab left, not a trace of the home even visible, and yet the house next to it would be virtually untouched. And that's just the way the winds play with these flames, and they can pick up a flame and they can drop these embers on another house and they can completely skip over one house. That is what happens in a lot of these wildfires. So if you're wondering, well, why are there 3 homes that are incinerated and then there's one just standing there and then the home on the other side of it is incinerated again? It all has to do with the winds and how they catch these flames and these embers and where they drop them.
Yeah, and producer Danielle is in my ear telling me that we did miss one home. There's actually 11 homes that we counted from HD Chopper 8, Chris, but that's great context that you bring from covering wildfires all over the place. This is the majority of the homes that have burned, for those of you who are just joining us, is on Broadview Drive in the Spring Ridge neighborhood of Balch Springs. Again, this is on Broadview Drive. We have counted 11 homes that have burned in this fast-moving grass fire that started just after 4 o'clock this afternoon. And you can see that emergency crews have made great progress over the last hour and a half to stop more damage from happening. But we just heard from Israel Medina, who lives in this neighborhood a couple streets over, and he talked about the fear of seeing the fire and immediately going outside once he knew they were okay, going outside and watering his property so that nothing happens to their property.
And I will say, if there's one positive, as small as it is, to take away from this, in a lot of these wildfire situations, they're happening in slightly more remote areas or in winding roads that have varying degrees of elevation and forestry around it. In this case, at least the crews have a relatively easy and stable ingress and egress points. That meaning they can get equipment in, they can get equipment out, and there are several areas around which they can stage. That often is not the case, and the crews always have to be aware of that. You know, in a more remote area where you're wondering, yeah, you do want to get the retardant and get the water on it, you want to carve these fire lines, but you also have to always be aware of how you get out of the fire. If the winds change direction, if that fire moves, those crews always have to have a way to pull back and get out if that happens. In this case, it's a relatively straight line, and it's bordered by some of these major roads. I think Pete was saying, you know, I-20, Beltline Road. So you are able to get those trucks into position to give them the best available chance at containing this fire.
And there you see where the fire started behind Broadview Drive there on the south side of that neighborhood in the field where we heard from Matt Howerton earlier. He said he was just 100 feet away from this neighborhood, and he just talked about just how charred and how black all of that field is right now. The good news, Chris, is that over the last 15, 20 minutes or so, we don't see that dark, thick, black smoke anymore. It's now, for the most part, white, although we still see flames like still chewing through that house right in front of us. Just unbelievable. And you just pray that no one has been injured in this. We have not been able to get that information yet. Ariel Plasencia has been speaking with officials, and we hope to get an update from her soon.
Yeah, in fact, do we have Ariel on the line? Can we go to her and get an update?
According to the city manager, crew is cutting the grass. It's something metal.
Hey guys, thanks so much. So one last live look at the scene here. Again, black smoke everywhere. You still got that one ladder that's spraying that home. That's a majority of the resources that we've seen here. We've watched more trucks and more cars arrive on scene, trying to bring more resources in. You look past there, you can see another truck that appears to kind of be attacking this from the ground with a hose there if you look deep into that scene. Again, just so much charred land here. And as I was talking again, I-20, if you can picture it, it's behind the camera. I-20 going west, and you have that that service road right there. This burn line comes all the way up to that service line and then extends all the way back to the homes back there. So it's certainly a good chunk of this neighborhood. And Kristen, Izzy, again, we're working to talk to officials. We'll have more updates coming up later tonight at 6.
All right, thank you very much, Ariel. Now, we just had a producer come in, and we just got some new information about how this fire started and maybe how big of an impact it was. What are you hearing here, Izzy?
Okay, we're hearing at least 20 structures. 20 structures have burned to the ground this afternoon, and we are now being told that this grass fire started as a result of city crews cutting the grass in this area. And you think about just how bone dry it is out there, and once that fire started, it just took off. If you know anyone who has been affected by this fire or is in this Spring Ridge neighborhood and is having trouble breathing, please let them know that the American Red Cross is at the Balch Springs Rec Center helping residents with whatever they need.
We're going to wrap our digital coverage here as we get ready for WFAA News at 6. So I encourage you, right after World News, we'll be back on the air with an update on this fire and, of course, the incident earlier today at Dallas Love Field.
News.
And we begin with breaking news of a massive fire in Dallas County in the city of Balch Springs. A live look from HD Chopper 8 where you can see the devastation from a grass fire that started around 4 o'clock this afternoon. It charred at least 20 structures, including at least 11 homes, Chris.
Yeah, now we're getting a better idea of how this fire started and what's being done for the families who've lost their homes.
Yeah, I've never seen a fire spread like this in the Metroplex in my 14 years here at WFA. Never seen anything like that.
Yeah, Balch Springs is east of Dallas, inside the Dallas County line. Matt Howard is there on the ground, bringing us some new information on how this fire started. Matt?
Yeah, Chris and Izzy, I want you to take a look to my right over here. There is a field that is behind all of these homes. According to the city manager, Susan Clues, a crew was mowing this field. They hit a metal object while mowing. Sparks flew, a fire started, and then because of these winds, because of the dry conditions out here, that fire started to move rapidly towards those homes. And the property line that we now know is Bell Manor Court. I'm going to step out of the way so you can see a little bit better vantage point that we have here. We're at Fox Fuels, which is right next to this grass fire where everything started, and just, I believe, south of where these homes are. You can see just all of the devastation from this. There's at least one ladder up right now spraying water into the top of a home. I mean, this fire has gone through and ripped through homes, and according to Susan Clues, at least 20 impacted, either burned down or touched by the fire line. And we were saying earlier just how dry it is out here. If anything catches fire out in this field, because it is so dry, because the winds are so high, it can really be a recipe for disaster, and that's what we are seeing out here off of Bell Manor Court. There's a lot of fire crews that have responded to this. The city of Balch Springs is here in this parking lot of Fox Fuels, creating somewhat of a command post so they know what's going on. City Manager Susan Clues told me that the entire idea right now is to just contain this fire, get other people out of the way that are nearby to keep it spreading from home to home. And obviously we want to protect life here, so those folks in that neighborhood, they've been taken away from the area. But at this point, they're trying to contain this stuff as fast as they can to try and prevent any more homes from being burned. We'll be out here for the rest of the night and have another update for you at 10 p.m. Back to you.
All right, Matt, just a quick question before we go. Have you noticed, I'm looking behind you, and I got to say, this is the first time we've actually seen somewhat clear sky and not that black smoke pouring out of everything. I mean, do you smell and feel the difference out there from when you were there an hour ago?
Yeah, Chris, we were coming down I-635 and you could see black smoke filling the air. I mean, it was just a plume of it, and it has gotten better. It's gone down, it's dissipated, which makes you think that crews are having some success with this fire. But we won't know the exact extent of how they're doing containment until we get a little bit closer inside the neighborhood, which is where we're headed right after this.
All right, our thanks to you, Matt Howerton. And of course, the lack of rain is creating near perfect conditions for this kind of fire. And you heard it was the crews cutting the grass. They hit a metal object and sparks.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we see. You know, we talk about the sparks, you know, no welding, don't drag tow chains on the ground, the cigarette butts, all of that stuff. It sounds like it was an accident, but I mean, when you have, you know, that part of Dallas County is in a rainfall deficit, and I think we can go back to these shots here as well. I know we have the helicopter up. I mean, when you have, you know, you're in a rainfall deficit of at least 10 to maybe 12 inches of rain for that part of Dallas County. You're under an exceptional drought right now in that part of Dallas County. And then you have just one spark from a lawnmower. There we are. And then you have a south wind of 10 to 20, you know, gusting up to maybe up to 25. I mean, it doesn't take anything. And then you see this kind of devastation. And Cynthia, have you and Chris heard of any injuries with this?
No, I mean, these crews have been so busy fighting the fires at multiple homes, 11 homes at last count. So we're still waiting to get word from them, but we keep asking.
Yeah, and obviously, Pete, is something you always talk about. You're like a broken record sometimes about the smoke detectors, making sure you change your batteries and things like that. And this is why, because, you know, sometimes these fires spark up and it is so fast. If you do not have warning, it can be very easy to get trapped in a very bad situation.
No doubt.
In the meantime, if you know anyone who needs a place to stay, they can't breathe, they lost their home, the Balch Springs Rec Center is the place to go tonight, and the American Red Cross is there assisting families who have been affected by this fire. We're going to stay on top of it throughout this newscast and also on our digital platforms and WFAA.com. But now we've got some other news we've got to get to today.
Yeah. We've been following all afternoon. A fast-moving grass fire has burned 20 homes in a neighborhood near I-20 at Beltline Road. Now, this fire started a couple hours ago. The city manager says a crew was mowing the grass when they hit something metal, which created the initial spark. That small spark set off the fire. It raced across the field to catch some of the fences behind the homes on fire, and then obviously spread to the homes. So far, there are no reports of any injuries. Multiple fire crews are working there to make sure it is contained and put out. Some of the residents who have been impacted by this are being directed to go to the Balch Springs Rec Center to meet with the Red Cross. We'll be right back with a lot more.
We're seeing white smoke and little of it right now. Earlier, it was a bunch of really black, thick smoke. A grass fire burned 20 structures within the last couple of hours. We know at least 11 homes were destroyed in the Spring Ridge neighborhood near I-20 and Beltline. City manager says it started from a crew mowing grass that hit something metallic that created sparks, which started the fire, which spread quickly. Fire crews are still working to get it fully under control. Fire victims are being sent to the Balch Springs Rec Center to meet with the American Red Cross.
Yeah, and depending on how fast that fire really sparked up, you wonder if the crew mowing the grass could have even done anything or reacted fast enough.
Well, you have to think they tried their best to stop it, but
yeah,
you have those winds of 10 to 20, gusting a little higher than that. I mean, that grass is just tender.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I mean, man, that went fast.
Yeah.
Meteorologist Kyle Roberts is here, and he said, you know, it started by that kind of right there in that corner, which would be kind of off to the southeast by that convenience store and that gas station. He said, Pete, it was in that neighborhood, you know, in just minutes.
Yeah.
So
It went right to
Drive.
the fence line, engulfed the fences, and then it was
he
off
said
and
the
running.
fences just like exploded. They burned so quickly. Wow. And then next thing are the homes. So, I mean, that just goes to prove how dry we are, how quickly and easily these fires start, and how devastating they can be in minutes.
That was scary to watch.
In minutes, it really was. Let me show you this. This is what's happened. You know, so I think of the people that were affected, impacted, the firefighters that are out there, and you look at these temperatures, man, it is hot. 101 in Dallas, 102 in Fort Worth. Right now, the temperature in Denton is 103. The winds right now in Dallas, McKinney, Fort Worth, 20 up to 26 miles per hour. We have a 21. These are the gusts right now in Corsicana. And then you look at the relative humidity. Dallas and Terrell, Balch Springs is right here in the middle. So that fire is right along I-20. Just on the I-20 is kind of the southern boundary, and then up to the north. So right here in eastern Dallas County, you look at 27% relative humidity. It's dangerously dry here in Dallas County. And then there's this part of Dallas County, you're looking at extreme drought. So that's the second to the worst classification. The worst is this exceptional drought. So yeah, and that part of Dallas County, as I've mentioned, is at least 10 inches below normal with the rainfall. So once again, it does not take much at all. What can you do to help prevent wildfires? Again, it's the cigarettes. Don't toss them out the window. Don't toss them on the ground. The tow chains, remember, they can start sparks as well. Don't park or drive over the tall grass. All of that, the engines underneath, the heat from the engines alone can start a fire. And then you think about the outdoor burning. It's banned all across North Texas. If you're watching WFA right now, you're under a burn ban. All of North Texas under a burn ban, and be careful with sparks. What we saw, I'm sure that crew was being careful, but it happens so quickly. Bad things happen in no time at all. Cedar Hill right now, it's 102. The humidity level's so low, we don't have a heat index. At DBU, it's the same deal, 102. Very, very low, dangerously low humidity, so no heat index there. The high today was 104, 5 away from the record. The record's 109. The normal high, we have now reached the hottest time of the year. It will last for 3 weeks. So now through the middle of August is the hottest, climatologically, the hottest time of the year in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The morning low, a very warm 83. The normal low is 77. My forecast tonight, a warm, breezy night tonight. 81 is the low tonight, mainly clear skies. During the day tomorrow, another hot one, just like today. Dry and breezy, a heat advisory tomorrow. Those heat advisories go into effect when you expect the air temperatures and the heat index, the combination of the two, to be around 105 or hotter. That will be in the forecast tomorrow. Sunshine, hot temps tomorrow, hot on Wednesday, hot on Thursday, hot on Friday. At least a little bit of rain as we head through the upcoming end of the work week and then into the weekend. A little bit of rain. There's not much, but 20 to 30% of us will see rain on Friday, Saturday, and even the end of the day on Sunday. And maybe we drop out of the triple digits into the upper 90s as we head through Saturday. We have a weak front that's going to move in. Right now it looks like it stays up along the Red River. It could bring a little bit of rain as far south as the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Fingers crossed for that. Don't count on a whole lot. It's that time of year where the models always show some rain and then they back off. But right now we'll stay consistent with what we had last week until we have a little bit more verification. But Joe, I just looked. It's 66 in Oxnard. I'm going to stop talking, and if I could tell you to shut up while you're talking to me, I would. Where's your jacket, Joe, just to let me know how cool it is out there? 66, man, it was 104 here today.